Good morning, and I am Gayatri Thakur, representing Tata Center for Technology and Design at IIT Bombay. It's lovely to see you in such large numbers, and I'm sure they're only going to go larger. As our professor in charge has very kindly introduced, and of course our Dean Alumni and Corporate Relations, the mandate for today, taking ideas to scale, we'd like to throw light on the kind of speakers that we have invited today to be able to share their experiences and their views on how it is, how impossible it is, and how challenging it is to scale ideas to market. At this juncture, we have completed 5 years at Tata Center. We have innovations that are ready, that are mature, that are waiting to know how to be taken out. And there are questions among our project teams, among our students, who we call Tata Fellows. And we, at Tata Center, wonder how to overcome these challenges. The reason for inviting speakers such as these is exactly this. These are people who've been in the industry, have been in the social space, and from academia, who have stories to tell us, who have things that we can learn from, and who will definitely take the discussions further. We have 2 panel discussions today. One, which will talk of garnering resources to scale up. We have people coming in from different parts of India. Of course, there is one panelist who couldn't make it because his part of the country is still under fog. We have another panel discussion which talks of success and failure stories that could contribute to our learning in order to scale up. But to begin with, we have 2 gentlemen from the industry who have contributed to the corporate world and have yet wanted to now give back to the social space. We are fortunate to have met them over the past 2 months, had conversations, a lot of discussion, and we've been delighted to see the number of questions that have come in from them to know more about the center's activities. I'd like to welcome you all, and a very special welcome to our speakers, who will all be taking the stage shortly. I'd like to start with our first speaker, Mr. Hemant Luthra. He has asked me specifically that he should not be introduced, and he'd like to introduce himself to you all. Mr. Luthra, stage is yours.
Good morning. As I may have you overheard me say that the less contraptions I have attached to me, the better I function. So, and I also insisted that Gayatri not do introductions because those introductions are meant for when you're raising money and so on for your corporate enterprise, but not when you're speaking to IIT Bombay alumni, even though I like to think that IIT Bombay is not the same class as IIT Delhi, which is where I came from, but it's okay. I have the first line. My wife thinks, my bosses think that I have my foot perpetually stuck in my mouth, and it's a reputation that I've had. Sometimes it's stood me in good stead, sometimes it's not. And let's move to the next resume. IIT Delhi education is ongoing because the minute your education stops, you become an old man. So it's ongoing, and that's why I'm here, not just to tell you what I've been doing, but maybe learn a lot from the feedback that I get. IBM 1970 to 78, joined them. They said that I was an engineer. They said that you're not good enough as an engineer. You are a good bullshitter. You'll make you a good salesman. So I did marketing. I failed my finance class, and then I got angry with myself. I taught myself finance. And in a couple of years, the guy who headed the finance function left, and I was made head of corporate marketing finance to the finance industry after failing my finance class, and became finance industry specialist for Southeast Asia. The point is not what I did, the point is that it's all about application. And when we are sitting here as IIT students, we all have some kind of a roadmap in front of us. That roadmap is not going to happen. The roadmap is going to change, and it's going to change faster than it changed for me. Did paper and chemicals for 18 years, private equity for 3 years, telecom for 3 years, and the automotive industry for the last 18, 19 years with Mahindra. I was not a risk taker, but when I joined Mahindra, Mr. Mahindra said, what would you like to do? Would you like to run the auto business, the tractor business? And I got tempted by saying that if somebody is providing me the capital, the stuff that I never could think of doing myself, why don't I become what became the resident entrepreneur? Next slide, please. I'm not an academic, as you will discover, so that I will not put my mouth on academics. We all talk about innovation and what are the challenges. There's a culture in corporate India. If you are not good enough for a real job within inverted commas, then you go into R&D. There's a stigma attached to it. How much institutional support you get is an issue, depending on how much of cut and paste the company that you're working for is doing. Okay. We don't, in many corporate world, also have cutting edge infrastructure. It's mostly reverse engineering of technology. There's an issue of funding. There are limited options of collaborating, and people are more interested in a safety net. So when I was starting new companies for Mahindra, it was a damn tough job to persuade people to come and give up their stock options in Mahindra and try and take up something else inside a new entity. Next slide. But self-motivation, the entrepreneurial intent, which is latent in all of us, knowledge and skills, I don't think advanced education has anything to do with it. It's your adaptability, your gut feel, your willing to learn from other people's experience, your own network that you can tap, which is what I had to do when I left IBM with the finance industry marketing. Mr. Tata asked me, what do you do? So I said, I've been with IBM. So he said, you want to be a salesman? I said, no. And I said, I want to be a marketing guy. He said, we don't need marketing guys. We don't need sales because the government of India ensures that demand is greater than supply, and we are only interested in distribution. What do you want to do? Have you been with IBM? I said, yeah. You want to be CIO? I said, no. So he said, what do you want to do? I said, I failed my finance class. And he said, what are you going to do now? So I said, you ever think of becoming CFO? I said, no, no chance. I've not got cost and works accountant. I don't have an MBA. I don't have a finance degree. I've got nothing. He said, since you know nothing and we don't know what to do with you, you become my executive assistant. And I became his executive assistant. And maybe 20 years later, when I joined Mahindra, I did the same thing because he said, you know nothing about automotive. Let's see what you can do with something new. And when we were doing some thinking of what we would do with something new, this was 2005, pre-crisis, the automotive industry in the US. Next slide, please. Next slide. The automotive industry was in crisis. A number of companies were shrinking. They were all consolidating. And there was an article in Business World which is that this is the biggest opportunity in the history of manufacturing. As you move up, India liberalizes and you be able to bring technology home. Next slide, please. Since I had come from private equity and nobody wanted to, and everybody thought I was crazy, one of the biggest, best companies in the world in tractors was for sale. It was 3 times the size of Mahindra. Nobody wanted to make a bid for it. Nobody was mad enough to think. But I went to them and said that you got a great balance sheet, you got good corporate governance, lots of banks are willing to lend you, and we bid for a company which was 3 or 4 times the size of Mahindra. Okay. The bid was not successful because the embedded manufacturers in Europe did not want a low-cost, high-quality guy to come in, and they bid too high, and they kept us out of it. But there were many learnings from that bid. Next slide, please. Okay. And one of the learnings was that we can try and do something by um, acquisition. And I have this slide which I had the audacity to produce in front of Anand Mahindra and his wife, saying that Anand is a practicing polygamist. And these are actually pictures of Anand Mahindra with the Anuradha there and some of his companies that we actually acquired. And we played the Shanai to this slide in corporate, and people thought I was mad, but they're probably not wrong. And we said we'll start from zero. And because we discovered a few things about what the Finnish company Luthra was making, where they were sourcing components from, we said we'll start and we'll create $1 billion business in 5 years. Anand Mahindra asked me if I was mad, and I said yes, I was. And he said, why the hell are you doing this? I said, I'm doing this because if we aim for anything less than $1 billion in 5 years, the results of what we do are going to show up on your fifth or sixth decimal place of Mahindra. So it was audacious, and it was something, but it was at least a challenge. And the point that I'm making is that anybody sitting in this room could have done this because I had zero qualifications for doing, but just the mad passion and a dream. Next slide, please. Akbarnama says that he wanted to have territory, revenue, consolidate, be a catalyst for the culture and arts, and get the best of all religions. And we coined the word Anandnama. And this is not a pitch to Anand, for Anand Mahindra, but is just to say that even in corporate India, when you make presentations, they can be dry and boring. You can make them a little bit more interesting. And we had a thing which said that Anandnama means technology, markets management, etc. And that should drive us in our acquisitions attempts. I'm talking about scaling up in a different context. I'm sorry I don't have enough experience in talking about taking ideas to say a scale in the social context. But I'm putting this up here because I will follow with something that we've done by taking other stuff outside of the corporate umbrella to bigger things, so that the inspiration that I'm trying to transfer to people, the younger people, kids here, is you have the same problems in the corporate world, you have similar problems when you're starting off from zero. In one case, you rely on corporate funding, in another case, you rely on venture capital. But you need to dream, and you need to dream big. People talk about mergers and acquisitions, and if there are any corporate finance students in this room, they always asked me that what is the great thing about mergers and acquisitions, and how do you acquire companies? And I always say that the invention of the spreadsheet is the worst thing that has happened for M&A. Absolutely the worst thing. I think they've done a disservice by having a spreadsheet, because during my time, we used to make calculations by hand. We made the right assumptions about what you wanted to buy. We looked at people in the eye. We decided to trust them. Now when somebody comes to me and says, if you change the interest rates by 0.25%, if you change the growth rates by 0.5%, if you change the market share by 7% or 0.25%, Mr. Luthra, here are 32 examples of what you can choose. Okay. And somebody asks me, how do you do valuation? That's how I do valuation, after I've looked people in the eye. Next slide, please. Based on that, so in this process of beginning the partnership, we had people whose company we were acquiring, they came to attend my daughter's wedding, I attended their baptism. That is what the integration was. Every marketing book, every management book will teach you about post-merger integration. We never had any problem with post-merger integration because we only did pre-merger integration. And the pre-merger integration was done at my son's wedding. It was there somebody's baptism, and it was done by making sure that the beer industry in Germany was well fed by people like us. The wine industry in Spain was well fed by people like us. And that's the kind of support that we gave to the respective countries by consuming vast quantities of beer and wine together and breaking bread together. Next slide. So we went from, had a period of rapid growth, number of acquisitions, not one in an auction. Okay, and all through personal contact. Some deals took 12 months, some took 24 months. Funding took forever. Okay, and all the CFOs inside Mahindra used to say, do you know what the return at IRR is going to be? If you've done your valuation like that, how do you know what your IRR is going to be? Have you looked people in the eye? But fortunately, Mr. Mahindra Senior, who is now 94, okay, said that, Hemant, when you look at how you want to grow, okay, I only want you to answer 3 questions. Are they people like us? Are they people who can be trusted? Do they have the right values? Okay, and do they have the right technology? And if you answer those questions, Hemant, don't show me a balance sheet, because the valuation is your responsibility. And taking this forward is your responsibility. Getting return on capital is your responsibility. Don't put the monkey on my back. Okay. Next. We've gone from 0 to about 5 billion in market cap. In the last 5 years, the share price has gone up 5 times. We've done rather well. But somewhere in between, we had a major problem, and which was the Lehman crisis, when the world was coming to an end, so to speak. And we found a Spanish company that was based in Spain, and they saw us in India. The European customers said Europe is slowing down, and please follow us to Asia. Our European customers say, please follow us to Latin America. And I could not manage a company which is in India, Europe, and Latin America, because I don't know the cultures, I don't know anything, and I'm not smart enough to do that. So we made a joint venture. The joint venture was done the same way, 2 years. And then the board of directors asked me that, Hemant, you're investing in Spain. So I said, yes. He said, have you not heard of the word pigs? So I said, yes, I have. Portugal, Ireland, Greece, and Spain. He said, why are we investing in Spain? Have you done due diligence? So I said, I'm not a finance guy. I'm not smart enough to do due diligence. I'm not smart enough to read a spreadsheet. But I promise you that I have had wine and Rioja in every bar in Bilbao, Madrid, and Barcelona. And if there's a recession in Spain, the Spanish people don't know about it. Okay, so that's the quality of due diligence that we did. Yes, we went from 0 to more than $1 billion. We exceeded our target. We didn't go from 0 to $1 billion. We went from 0 to $3 billion. We learned that we should think big. We learned that we should be bold. And in this process of being bold, we put together a partnership in which Mahindra lost 51% of its share to the Spanish, but became a big holder of the Spanish parent company. And the model that I'm saying is that even when we do innovation, I find, and do angel investing, I find that entrepreneurs are very concerned about losing control. How much control should we give to the angel investor? How much control? The angel investors are dependent upon people who have got the idea. The angel investors cannot do without you. And if you have to give up equity, as long as you're running a good business, nobody is going to sell you down the stream, because the angel investor depends on the promoter. So I don't think the issue of how much somebody owns should be a major criteria. It was not in the case of the Mahindra and the CIE alliance. As I said, trusting and knowing each other helps to build relationships. Most of the relationships were built in the bars and on the golf course. Okay. You used to discover who's moving the ball, who's cheating on his score very quickly. And therefore, should he be paid 11 times EBITDA or 12 times EBITDA, depends on stuff like this. Okay. We learned a little bit about cultural relationships, and most of my colleagues used to say that, Hemant, how did this deal get done? At the last time when we were sitting at the table, we were still miles apart. But if I am stuck in the groove of what my comfort zone is, and if at the end of the evening, I want to find Indian restaurant in Munich, okay, instead of going to the Hofbrauhaus and having a beer with my German friends, the deal will get done in Munich at the Hofbrauhaus and not at the Indian restaurant where dosa masala is being served, or at the table next morning. It's just how much time people spend with each other and how we build stuff. And yes, we went from 0, and in 2015, 10 years after we started, we were recognized as one of the biggest wealth creators in the country. But there was another need to put my foot in my mouth again. Okay. And what we said was that we will never be able to make money if we are making components for people, okay, to their design. We must be making components to where we own the intellectual property. And therefore, we started a company where we said we'll protect the value and we will do from to ensure customer stickiness, design to delivery. And in order to get design, I think most of you have seen Mahindra cars. I don't think they are, if the ladies in the room will excuse me, they're not the sexiest looking cars. We need to improve the looks the customer needs to have. And therefore, we went and made an acquisition of the world's leading company, Pininfarina, design company. A family-owned, third generation. The scion of the family had died in a motorcycle accident. My wife was very concerned that I was making 20 trips to Turin in 24 months, and I said, I'm dating a lady. The lady that I happened to be dating was that 85-year-old lady whose picture you see over here, and she was the head of the family. And her major concern was, would the name of the company be protected? Would the brand be protected? Would the photographs of her husband and the founders still remain in the boardroom? And yes, we were able to put something together which has then hopefully will result in being able to have sticky customers with better design. Next, this one, yeah, hold it there. What is, when we talk about entrepreneurship, okay, and you have linkages to thought and action and what we call adjacency in the corporate world. If you're designing a car and if you're designing a component, why should that component only be designed for a car? It cannot also be designed for a plane. The aerodynamics of a plane are not very far apart from the aerodynamics of a car. It's a greater risk that is involved. And therefore, we discovered, next slide please, that in India we were getting left behind. And for those of you, I don't know how many of you will remember that the National Aeronautics Lab wanted to build a plane called the Saras. Does anybody remember that? Saras crashed. National Aeronautics Lab had an egg on its face. Okay. India was the largest importer of defense equipment. There were offset clauses. Offset clauses meant that you had to buy from India. There was a market we thought was $15 billion, and I went to Mr. Mahindra and said that let's start making aerospace components also. And he says, fine. Next. And therefore, from automotive components, design, owning the intellectual property, going to components for aerospace was not as much of a stretch as it now appears. And what we did was we put all of this together, okay, and we said next that we will make small parts, then we'll graduate to big assemblies, then we'll go to even major assemblies. And along the way, we discovered that Boeing was making components in Australia and Melbourne. I believe I have a lot of Australian friends here. And they wanted to shut that plant because it was too expensive to make metal components in Australia. They wanted to make composites in Australia. Boeing didn't know what to do with the plant. We went to Mr. Keskar, who's renowned. He said, we'll transfer the plant to India. We said, we won't pay anything for it. He says, as long as you dismantle it there and pay for the dismantling cost and bring it here, take it for free. Okay, so we brought it here for free. We now had every piece that we wanted to make components. And National Aeronautics Lab came to us and said that we've not been able to build the planes, Saras has not been able to fly. We have all the fixed assets. You have the people. Can we have a joint venture which will do a 50-50 and let's design a plane from scratch? Okay. How many of these people in the room would say yes? You're sitting in my place. I did say yes. I put my foot in my mouth. I'm the world's leading practitioner of that art, of putting my foot in my mouth. Next slide. So we accepted the challenge of putting it together because we said that India needs a plane. India has many, many small airports. The airports are between hub and hub, let's say between Bombay and Delhi, but many small airports are not serviced. They'd be ideal for an 8-seater, 10-seater turboprop plane, which is at a cost which is a fraction of what it would do in Europe. Mahindra had the experience of building a car from scratch, the Scorpio, and the cost of building that car was not $1.5 billion, which costs in the West for a new car, new engine, everything designed from scratch. Mahindra developed it for $150 million. If you build a plane and design it at European costs and American costs, the design and development cost could be anywhere between $500 million to $1 billion. I asked for approval and said, can we participate with National Aeronautics Lab? Anand again said, are you out of your mind? I said, yes, I am. And then the CFO said, what is the IRR? And I said, the IRR is infinite because if the plane flies, okay, we will never do an engineering job for per hour basis. If the plane doesn't fly and it crashes, you can have my head. So Anand and the CFO said, your head is not going to be worth very much. Okay. But since it is the outrageous ambition of an irrational CEO, go for it. Can we have the video, please? True story. Next slide. It's a reality. But what has happened after this reality is that, as we predicted, this plane costs 1/3 the cost of a Cessna. Okay. The development cost, because NAL had the fixed assets, okay, was all of $15 million. That was it. And Mahindra owns 50% of the intellectual property. But if you remember the different pieces that I was talking about, which was automotive components, aerospace components, engineering services, aerospace, okay, we decided that we would never be able to scale up the engineering services business if we only had Mahindra as a customer. And therefore, we separated that business, took all the Mahindra people off the board, okay, and started selling engineering services to the rest of the world. Okay. Today, Mahindra accounts for less than 5%, and 99%, 95% of the engineering services are bought by Rolls-Royce, Bentley, because Pininfarina was there, Ferrari, Fiat, and so on. 95% of the revenue comes from there. From zero, that company has gone to about $700 million. And in the middle of what it is doing is that because the EBITDA of that company in India is 25% compared to 10% in Western Europe and North America, Tech Mahindra, which is the entity that we started on this business under, is in the process of acquiring a company which is $1 billion in revenue, but only 10% EBITDA because they do not have an efficient backend. So the next step for Tech Mahindra will be that they will go from 500 or 600 million to 1.5 billion in one big leap, because engineering services grew. I'm saying organically, I'm talking about scaling up, if you can call it. And when we go to do the selling of engineering services, I don't take my laptop with me. Okay. I asked Mr. Mahindra, can I fly the Scorpio that we have designed to the R&D center of Audi? And I put it there. And the Martin Winterkorn, who was the chairman of Volkswagen before he was fired, okay, he said, you do this for 10,000 euros? Yes, sir, we do this. He didn't look at anybody else's presentation was on the screen, because this was real stuff. When we took this plane and flew it into the offices of Airbus, they knew we were not competing with them, but here were people who were doing something which was an idea being translated into something that was a practical product at a price which was 1/5 the development cost, and which is what all of us or you in this room are capable of doing. So Airbus, Bombardier, Boeing are one of our principal customers. So my idea of talking about Mahindra scaling up and whatever we've been doing was this. I don't want to overshoot my time. I want to leave time for questions. But if you go to the next slide, okay. As part of the process, I think the gray hair has enabled me or entitled me, as somebody said, that to become more comfortable with myself. Okay. As you become older, you also have earned the right to be wrong. Okay. You've also earned the right with people like Gayatri to come and give lectures over here. Okay. And one of the greatest pleasures that I'm getting back today, and Deepak was talking to me, he's much more aligned with this than I am, is giving back. And in the process of giving back, we as a group of IIT guys as angel investors have invested in biofuels, have invested in alternate energy, we've invested in nanotechnology, invested in chronic health care, we've invested in child care, and we've invested in sanitation and water conservation. I have a couple of minutes on each of these, which are five of them, but I will be a slave to Gayatri's time. If I have 10 minutes, I'll do it. If I don't, I won't. Gayatri? Anybody? Okay. Let's go to the next slide, please. Biofuels. Next one. All of you know that the sugar industry is in crisis. The government of India has to fix the price. They have to meet their political needs of paying the farmer a certain price for the crush, for the cane. That price is not what the sugar mills can afford. Therefore, there's excess stocks of sugar all over the world. And therefore, this company has decided that instead of making sugar, it will make ethyl alcohol. And because it also makes ethyl alcohol, it has some derivative products and ethyl acetates and so on, okay, which can be used in construction. They can be used in other chemical processes. The company started as a pure Godavari sugar, and it has migrated now from Godavari sugar to Godavari biorefineries. And if you see the numbers, I will not take too much time. Sugar constitutes a percentage of their sales of about 41%, cogeneration about 2%, the distillery does about 17%, and chemicals will do about 40% of their sales. Okay. The interesting thing is that the government of India says that you must pay the farmer X amount of money. Y amount of money you have to keep as sugar in stock. Even only if you can export it or convert it into ethyl alcohol do you get certain concessions from the government. What this company is trying to do is to move away from making sugar to making downstream chemicals and derivatives. It has these customers that you can see at the bottom, okay, and they expect, next slide please, they expect to be able to move from their present revenue of about $200 million to $250 million, but by moving to ethyl alcohol, what they will be able to do will be to move their EBITDA from 10% to 20%. So the growth is going to be 25% in revenue, but the profitability is going to be 50%. Now, Gayatri was talking to me earlier when I was sitting with her and saying that some bright ideas have happened inside the IIT campus, which are talking about jaggery and methods of scaling up and producing jaggery. And my job, I was telling Gayatri, was that to use the network that we have as a result of 40 years in corporate India, to maybe put the jaggery producer together with the Godavari sugar and see what can become of it. The next one is something that you might all find even more interesting, is that some of us have found somebody from IIT Roorkee, and he gave up his business and he said that I want to do nanotechnology. And the nanotechnology that he's done, next slide, all these things you're familiar with, solar and wind can't solve the problem of alternate energy, they're intermittent. Next slide, it's about hydrogen. Okay, hydrogen is very expensive, there's a risk of safety, but it's very, very clean. But the system cost would be 7 or 8 times that of an internal combustion engine. Next slide, please. What we have backed as angel investors is what we call the aluminum economy. Okay, it's an aluminum fuel cell, and the way it functions is as follows. Next slide, please. What you do is that you have an aluminum anode, you have a graphene carbon cathode, you put them into a cell, and from the cell you have hydrolysis. Unlike a lithium ion, it cannot turn itself on, but it needs a current to get the hydrolysis going. Okay. It's clean, it's efficient, and what you get as a waste is aluminum hydroxide, okay. But the fuel is water. The cell started off with an ability to do 0. kilowatt hours per cell. We've raised it to 2.5. We're probably going to take it to 10. As a result of which, to demonstrate the ability, and it's somewhere earlier in the slide, previous slide, just go back. No, sorry, slide. Yeah, this one. So we've got the idea was to be able to connect it to corporate. I was helpful and I was able to help it to connect to Mahindra. We pulled out the IC engine of one of the cars and we put a stack of these aluminum and graphene cells. Okay. We had to take out the back seat, we had to take out the boot because it was not compressed enough, energy efficient yet. But what it did was that I have a video of this car running for 25 kilometers on a bottle of water. Can we just jump straight to that video, please? I have got numbers on what is the efficiency, I have numbers on what is the cost, but why don't we take a look at this?
Log 9 materials. As technology evolves, the need of electric energy is on the rise. However, this rising demand is met by an equal impact on the environment, as still most of the sources of electricity are polluting in nature. Automobiles is one of the most polluting sector, which has called for the need of electric vehicles. But the current battery technologies used to power EVs see certain challenges, which make the overall concept of electrification of vehicles difficult to be adopted by the masses. Current battery technology, which needs to be charged before driving, enables an electric vehicle to have a range of just 100 to 150 kilometers, post which it needs recharging for an average of 5 hours. Further, the task of setting up the charging infrastructure is humongous, both in cost as well as space required, particularly in India, where the majority of cars are parked outside the house on the roads. The need for public charging infrastructure is even more profound.
The future of mobility is electric, that is for sure. But are we actually moving towards a cleaner future? Yes, energy storage technologies have evolved, but they still face problems like using scarce minerals, vulnerable to fire and explosions, and is pretty costly. On top of that, the evolution in energy storage has not been met by a similar growth in clean energy generation. So most of the electricity that we actually use to charge our batteries comes from polluting sources. This calls for the need of a new clean energy generating technology which is easily deployable, modular, compact and robust, and can cater to the increasing demand of electric vehicles as well as stationary applications.
Log9 Materials, a nanotechnology-based startup having years of experience in commercializing graphene, the wonder material, has developed a clean energy solution for both mobility and stationary power backup applications. They have created a metal-air battery which generates energy by a chemical reaction rather than needing to be charged from the grid power, and which has the potential to increase range of electric vehicles to beyond 1,000 kilometers. The battery runs on aluminum, water, and air, making it a truly clean and viable solution.
Graphene is the most efficient and enhanced form of carbon that exists today in the world. Metal air battery technology has struggled for years with primitive forms of carbon, leading to low efficiencies and high cost. Leveraging years of experience in materials development and product development, Log9 has made metal air battery technology a commercial reality.
This is one single cell of our aluminium air battery. Water flows inside this cell through these nozzles. Aluminium here and graphene membrane here are the 2 points of electric charge generation. Water interacts with air via this membrane. Aluminium disintegrates into powder. This powder can be again regenerated to form aluminium metal. So this is how we get clean energy.
The team did a prototyping of the solution, developed and ran a car powered by the same around the city. All you need is a bottle of clean water every few hundred kilometers. Also, they created a prototype of a genset using their technology, which acted as a supply to their office.
This carbon electrode here, or more commonly known as the air cathode, is the most crucial component of the metal air battery. But at the same time, it is also the most expensive one. Our materials team here has used graphene to improve the efficiency of this electrode by 5 times at 1/3 the cost.
Finally, something which does not generate smoke nor requires the hassle of charging for hours. The technology has applications in various sectors and will be a revolution in energy generation, meeting the ever-increasing demand sustainability.
Let's go to the next one. We've invested in a company, Mobile Gaming. China is one of the largest markets in the world in terms of how it is using the net. Next. The founders of this company were doing mobile. If you remember, some of you, there was something called Contest to Win in this country, and Contest to Win became Mobile to Win. They sold themselves to, took themselves to China. They sold themselves to Disney, and now what these guys do is that they offer not just mobile gaming. What they do is that they offer a platform. So if the F1 is happening in Shanghai, and Ferrari will say, create a game for me, and they create the game for Ferrari, okay, so that people are downloading Ferrari, the telecom operator is interested in the download, Ferrari is interested in marketing its brand, and they're now building brands for different companies. I'm not going to go too much into detail in this because we're going to run out of time. For those of you who are interested, I'm going to leave the presentations behind, and I'm giving Gayatri the approval to share them with whoever is interested. Just move on to the next slide. I want to stop here. Okay, this is what is happening in China. 42% of global commerce, 34% of global unicorns, and top 3 of the companies that are in the space. And that's why this Indian company went to China. And in the interest of full disclosure, I don't want to push this too hard. Happens to me with my brother-in-law. And if you have a brother-in-law based in Bombay, it's probably not a bad idea to send him away to Shanghai so that you don't need to see too much of your in-laws. So that's... I will not go through the video here. I'll come back. I want to go to this particular one, which is chronic healthcare. Again, comes to next slide, please. Yeah, go to 57. Next. Yeah. Patients who have got diabetes, who've got blood pressure, they forget to take their medicines. Once upon a time, we were all living in joint families. Today, we are not. They're living alone. They need a healthcare provider. We all want to make sure. So a couple of students from Harvard and Stanford, they came together. They said they've designed a little dispenser, which you see up there in the corner. And what the dispenser does is that when the doctor prescribes a medicine, you send it to a central agency which has got what I call the dose droid. What the dose droid does is it packages the medicines for that as you use them. So supposing you have to take something in the morning, something in the evening, and something at night, it packages that accordingly, puts it into a dispenser. The dispenser is enabled with an IoT chip. Okay? And if the patient does not take the medicine at the prescribed time, it first goes, there are different levels of alert. And the different levels of alert will allow you to, therefore, alert the spouse or the doctor or then the hospital that guy is not taking it on time. The dispenser costs 500, 600 rupees. The chemist provides it. And if you go to slide number 59, you'll see why the chemist is incentivized to provide it. The average monthly medicine per chronic patient is 4,000. Average margin is 30%. The gross margin on billing is 1,200 rupees. The average expenses of having this packaged is 500. The margin that is left for the chemist is 700. And therefore, the average margin for a patient is to enable to allow him to incentivize him is 8,400 rupees per annum. And if you have a footfall of 25,000, 50,000 or 100,000 people passing through the pharmacy of a hospital, there's an incremental income of 21 crores, 42 crores or 84 crores. So this is another thing that we backed. Next. These are the hospitals and the pharma company that have already adopted it, and Sequoia has offered to put in some money into this. Sequoia has also put money into the alternate energy fuel cell. So we have the connect to be able to help, and that's why I offered to Gayatri that I will be more than happy. As an IIT alumni who's learned so much from the IIT, it's impossible for me to get emotional about it without realizing how much I've taken, I want to give back, and that's why I'm here. I want to skip the one on childcare and go straight to number 68, which I think you will all like, and I will conclude on that basis. Next one. Number 70. Another bunch of IIT guys have got together and said, what will it take to get a waterless toilet? Okay. And what the waterless toilet does is that you know what's happening to the problem of open defecation. Women are embarrassed. Sometimes they're not sometimes, quite a lot of the rape cases that have happened is because women have to go out into the fields in different parts of the country. The process is anaerobic microbial inoculum. It's something that the guys have developed. And the present cost is about 40,000 rupees per toilet. I have been asked to help use my connections in the automotive industry, which does plastic and injection molding, to be able to bring down that cost. Today it is 10,000, can be brought down to 10,000 if we do 400 or 500 toilets per month. Okay. And here is something which is the background. Okay. Next slide. The deep shit. Okay. 4.5 billion people use open air defecation. In India, 524 million people are forced to defecate in the open. I'm taking the liberty of cutting out. So what's the big shit? There's 500,000 deaths of children per year, less than 5 years of age. There's a water crisis, there's a gender and economic inequality, the high incidence of disease. My classmate got inspired when Bill Gates carried a jar of human excrement. It's available on YouTube. And to the Swachh Bharat mission. And Madhu, my IIT Delhi colleague, said that was his holy shit moment. He entered the competition, did not win the first prize, okay, but he was a finalist at the Bill Gates challenge. We are now trying to scale it up, okay, using corporate CSR, using the automotive component guys who do the plastics, and I hope we will get somewhere. Next slide. Next. Next. And here I am trying to get to my end. Some of you I can see are breathing a sigh of relief already. Jaggery, I always gave you an example that we could use investment that we made in Godavari sugar and Godavari biofuels to link Jaggery. Gayatri told me about Shabd Mitra, VMosh, and Let's as a means of learning. I didn't talk about the company called Baby Destination. What it does is that it has got a chat group which has got about 10 million mothers who are talking to each other on the chat group on Facebook and WhatsApp. A bot has been invented to read these algorithms, link them to advertisers, and the advertisers are advertising there. And therefore, it is crowdsourcing of traditional Indian knowledge, whether it should coconut oil, whether you should use turmeric, whether you should this or that. Okay, so Shabd Mitra, VMosh, and Let's may be able to learn something from Baby Destination. IIT Bombay also, she told me about a project which is a gasifier, and can we use the compost from the Nirgandh waterless loos to then create biogas and maybe link those two projects. Gayatri also told me about the fact that some members of the faculty are saying that in a foundry, you have sand, and then sand is got chemicals, and by the time you've cast the metal, the sand becomes unusable. The people are dumping it in all the wrong places, but apparently some process is being developed by IIT Bombay to do that, treat that waste side so that can be disposed of without an environmental problem. We at Mahindra Automotive are producing automotive components, are using tons and tons of sand, and we'll be very happy to fund such a project and saying that will mean that we will be able to dispose of the sand in a better manner. Last slide. I'll leave this slide on hanging up there for anybody to reflect on. If I have time for questions, I'll take them. Gayatri says, yes, I do. So I'm here. Thank you. Any questions?
It's been very inspiring. Thank you so much for sharing the story, sir. I have, as an entrepreneur and entrepreneur, I have one question where we could learn from your experience here. There is a lot of innovation that comes in from innovators, of course, from the R&D, on the R&D side, and building taking that to market and scaling that requires collaborating with, partnering with, co-founding with people with business strategy, marketing skills, and experiences in network. And sometimes these two sides of the team have very different DNAs. So how, what's your advice to entrepreneurs for collaborating, forming teams, and ensuring that this important element is taken care of properly by the entrepreneurs in ensuring that their innovations go to the market?
How do we get people with ideas? Is that the question? How do we get people with ideas together with people who can help fund and scale and so on? Okay. I think this is one of those forums that TCTD is ideal. Okay, Mr. Deepak Satwalkar is sitting here. I'm standing here. There are other people. We are volunteering that given what experience we have in industry, we will connect you. And that's why my last slide was picking some 4 or 5 examples which I could specifically connect. Okay. The other thing that happens is that I am a mentor on, again, a volunteer on Harsh Mariwala's, program called Ascent, okay, as funded by Marico. And Ascent, what it does is that it's an open house. You register yourself with Ascent, okay, and say that I have got this project, and there are some people who volunteered themselves as mentors. It's all pro bono, it's all free, okay, and the two connect. So maybe I may not be able to contribute to your specific idea, but there will be an ecosystem that will be able to do so. And I think it's very important, because it's not a great idea to let good ideas die. Okay, I understand the problem, but now there are forums that are available. You're talking to some people here today, somebody who's just stepped out. And I think there are enough of my colleagues who are saying that we have taken so much from IIT that it's time to give back. So if you have something specific, through Gayatri, I have my contact. Mr. Satwalkar is here. The other people are here. Feel free, and maybe we'll be able to point you in the right direction. Maybe we will not and say that I don't know, but we'll try. If you're creating an investment fund, okay, I love the idea, because what we are doing just now is angel investors, and angel investors can only provide 2, 4, 5, 7 crores of capital. If you're talking about a fund like Sequoia, and in 3 or 4 of these, Sequoia has now put in 3, 4, 5 million, which is 20 crores. Okay, so any other questions?
Hi, sir. Thanks a lot. Am I audible?
Yes, please.
Thanks a lot for such an insightful speech. My question is regarding space tech startup ecosystem right now. We
I'm
have
sorry?
Space tech startup ecosystem.
SpaceX?
Space tech. Space technology.
Yeah, space technology, okay.
Yeah. So we have startups like Bellatrix, Dhruva, Kava. What are your thoughts about how they should scale up? Because right now, especially in angel and VC ecosystem, people are averse to making such huge decisions regarding capital, because they need at least 20 million to 30 million to even reach the MVP stage. So what are your thoughts on it, and how should they be scaling up?
I'm sorry, I don't get it. So if Gayatri, you heard it better, because maybe there was some problem with the mic. You're talking about startups in the space? Okay, so we haven't gone anywhere near space. All that I can tell you, we did something outrageous by trying to develop a plane, okay, with National Aeronautics Lab. Now, if ISRO wanted something, I'm sure they're already using Larsen and Toubro to make some of the booster rocket. Okay. But I don't know about any company that would as investing in space as for its own as an end means. But I know of enough people who are saying that they can contribute to the ISRO effort, they can contribute to the but if you have a specific question on that, as I said, I don't want to shoot my mouth off. Why don't you connect with me through Gayatri, and I'll try and see if there are somebody who's working on software or something, but at the moment I don't have an answer on space. Sorry. Yeah.
So Mahindra is one of the early entrant in electric vehicles. Why do you think there is no proper ecosystem in India?
Sorry?
Why there is no proper ecosystem for electric vehicles in India?
Why don't we do what?
Proper ecosystem, like from spare parts to last charging stations. Still there is still there are too many opportunities, but no one is really interested, or there
See,
is.
I think there are two different um, stakeholders in this. Okay, if Mahindra has its strength in building a car and using lithium ion as the traditional source, and they are investing in electric cars, but just now all over the world, electric cars are being subsidized. Okay, they're not standing up on their own. Okay. Charging stations should maybe be the responsibility of the people who are looking at an additional revenue source, maybe the guys who actually own the traditional gas station, because that's where people will come to charge. Okay. Maybe charging stations can be in parking lots, but I don't think Mahindra shareholders would approve of real estate and charging stations. Okay. They might say that we will transfer the technology to them, but I think Mahindra's energies have to be focused, otherwise the shareholders of Mahindra will scream, saying that you're not even producing an efficient electric car. Who are you to do the charging station? So I think there are two different people two different stakeholders in this. That's my view. And today I think while the electric vehicle talks a lot, okay, and that's why we invested in aluminum, China controls a large stake percentage of the lithium resources, and they have invested in Congo. They've been very smart. There's a lot of lithium in Australia, and there are lithium in other places which are difficult to reach in Latin America, Chile, and so on, the Chilean mountains. Okay. Today, India has got a fuel oil bill of, let's say, $100 billion plus, okay, on oil. Does anybody want to guess how much of that fuel bill on oil is two-wheelers and how much is four-wheelers, trucks, and anything else? Anybody wants to guess? How much is the electric oil bill, import oil bill for two-wheelers? How much for four-wheelers? Sorry? 20%? 20% for? You're almost there. It is 65% of the total fuel bill of this country is two-wheelers. Why the hell are we wasting our energy trying to make a four-wheeler electric vehicle which is parked on the road, has no charging facilities, but will not help us save our fuel bill? But if you have an electric vehicle being focused on two-wheelers, the two-wheeler is parked at home inside your garage. You can be plugged in. And therefore, the energy of the EV industry, while four-wheelers may be more sexy, okay, the two-wheelers are the ones which are the right target market for a country like us. There is no range anxiety if you have two-wheelers. Two-wheelers don't run more than 50 kilometers a day. The car runs 400, 200 kilometers depending on how much traffic and so on. So, I have to change some of these priorities and thinking. So, if you talk to Mr. Bhargav of Maruti, he said that my maximum number of cars are being sold at 5 lakhs rupees. If I add an electric battery to it, it will become 7 lakhs. And Mr. Bhargav has said many times, I'd like to invite the Transport Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, to come and do swappable batteries. Nobody knows the weight of a battery. Nobody knows the weight of a swappable battery. Nobody knows how many different types of battery there are. The ideal target market is two-wheelers. I'll stop here because Gayatri is going to throw me out, so I'll stop. Thank you very much. For those of you who want, I'm going to be outside.